Greetings to all and Happy New Year. 尊敬的师父慈悲，诸位同修阿弥陀佛。This is where we are in the Amida Sutra talking about the Elder Saripatra, and that was due to a special request that we talked about the 10 precepts. Let me quickly summarize what we discussed last time before diving into the remainder of the 10 precepts. Observing precepts, 持戒, 止耶, is fundamental to the development of wisdom, as indicated in the threefold study: precept, meditation, and wisdom. 戒定慧三学, tam học, giới định tuệ. I cannot emphasize enough that wisdom cannot be uncovered in the state of unskillfulness, 不善业, bất thiện nghiệp, and mental confusion, 迷惑, 颠倒, 迷惑, 颠倒, but only in the state of skillfulness and concentration. Precepts can help with the development of skillfulness and concentration. So far, we have discussed the bodily concepts, 身业, thân nghiệp. Firstly, we not only abstain from taking life, but also protect life. Secondly, we not only abstain from taking what is not given, but also give to those in need with the giving of material, knowledge, and fearlessness. 财布施, 法布施, 无畏布施, 大菩提, 法菩提, và vô ý bố thí. And then thirdly, we not only abstain from sexual misconduct, but find contentment and uphold loyalty in our relationships. As such, we cultivate merit, 修福, 度福, by upholding both the negative and positive forms of the bodily precepts and bringing benefits to self and others. It is our skillfulness and merits, 福德, 福đức, that we don't have to worry about the hardships of life, so that we can focus on spiritual cultivation and meditation. Because of our meditative mind, that we do not get emotionally stirred up and mentally confused. With the meditative mind, the more of the world that we experience, the more that we can see its true nature. That was where we left off last time. Are there any comments or questions before we dive into the main presentation of today? Okay, in that case, we will get into the main presentation today. So the next precept, the fourth precept, is abstention from false speech, 不妄語, 不妄語. This is the scriptural text, and I will just briefly go over it. I won't read every single word. But firstly, on the skillful, but we will talk about the skillful verbal actions, and the sutra is divided into unskillful verbal action and then skillful verbal action. In this case, the first unskillful verbal action, the Buddha explains to Kunda, the silversmith, that if you were in a meeting, a group meeting, or some sort of even a formal meeting, like a royal court proceeding, and if you were asked, what do you know about this case? If you were to say, if you don't know, but you say you know, or you haven't seen, but you said you've seen, then and if you consciously tell a lie for your own sake, or for the sake of another, to protect another, or for the sake of a certain reward, for a self-benefiting reward, then that is the first unskillful verbal actions of false speech. So that's the definition of false speech, is that you deliberately, consciously tell something that is not true. And then the Buddha, just to make sure that Kunda understood what he was talking about, he talked about the skillful verbal action. And so just the opposite is that If a person who's been called to a meeting and ask what he knows about the situation, and he abandons the telling that he abandoned the telling of lies, abstaining from telling lies. What he doesn't know, he say he doesn't know. What he has not seen, he say he has not seen. And he doesn't consciously, deliberately tell a lie for his own sake, for the sake of another, or for the sake of any reward. So that is skillful. There are 4 verbal actions in total: telling lies, divisive speech, harsh speech, and idle chatter or gossip. But we will talk about the first one. So this is the first verbal action. Before we deal with the first verbal precept of not telling lies, let me make a few general remarks about the 4 speech precepts collectively. Firstly, it is interesting to note that there should be 4 of them. As we mentioned, telling lies, divisive speech, harsh speech, and idle chatter or gossip. We don't see the other precepts, each with 4 different kinds, such as 4 different kinds of killing, or 4 separate precepts for different ways of taking what is not given. So obviously, speech is of great importance as the principal vehicle of communication between person to person, between persons. It plays a social role in human development. Language is one of the distinguishing characteristics of man as compared with other animals. For Buddhism, speech is important because it occupies the immediate position between the body and the mind, and between action and thought. Being neither so gross as the body nor so subtle as the mind, it is very difficult to control. And because it relies in the middle between the body and the mind, that it is so important to control the speech, but also why it is so difficult to control it. Because you have to really pay attention in order to detect it and to control it. But it is important to control speech because speech, in a sense, is a form of action. In other words, a form of apparent action with consequences, 果报, 果报, both for oneself and others. So as the Dhammapada 法句经跟法句 says with regard to one particular form of unskillful speech, the Buddha says, do not speak roughly to anyone. Those thus spoken to will answer back. Because angry talk is extremely painful to bear, you will experience retribution. 果报, 果报. So even though it's just speech, you cannot see it, but it has impact. And that's why we need to control our speech. But it is very difficult to control our speech because speech is so close to the thought, and thoughts are wandering thoughts that they go all over the place. And it's very difficult to even capture them because it's not physical. And speech is after all, it's vocalized thoughts, right? You vocalize your thoughts, but it's not thought. But that's why it's so difficult to control it. This is why people often have difficulty in realizing that what they say is capable of producing tangible effects in the outside world. That speech should therefore be controlled. So what you say is not tangible, meaning you cannot touch it, you cannot grab it, you cannot feel it, but it has its effect. You will face karmic consequences. 果报, 果报. How would one prevent the violation of speech precepts? Mr. Chen, our chairman, often says, we should ask ourselves, if we say something, we should ask ourselves, are we willing to accept the responsibility and bear the consequence of it? If yes, then say it. If no, then don't say it. So Buddhist tradition also points out that speech can be controlled by paying attention to what comes out of this door, right, your mouth, as well as by observing periods of temporary complete silence from time to time. Because when you're silent, you'll be more aware of your speech. You talk less, you become more aware of your speech. So ask ourselves, are we willing to accept the responsibility? And then the other way is to pay more attention to what we say. That's how we can prevent violating the verbal precepts. Another way of avoiding these transgressions or wrongdoing is to regularly be in front of the Buddha and vow not to violate the speech precepts. Eventually, one will have more awareness and be more careful with one's speech. Another way to prevent speech transgressions, 口罪业, 口, tội nghiệp, is to be mindful of Amitabha. When one is focusing on Amitabha, it is not easy for one to be distracted and lose control of his speech. On the other hand, when one is not mindful of Amitabha, it is easier to give rise to afflictions, phiền não, and unskillful mental states, tham sân si. Then speech will just follow the unskillful thoughts to other unskillful words. So if we are not controlling our thoughts, then we'll say things that will be unskillful. That's why it's very important that we chant Amitabha. We are mindful of Amitabha. So this way, we always have skillful thoughts, and this will help us to prevent saying unskillful speech, unskillful words. For the vast majority of people, the stream of speech is so constant and so uninterrupted that so much under the influence of unskillful mental factors like greed, anger, delusion, 贪嗔痴, 贪生si, many of them unaware that all 4 speech precepts are likely to be broken many times a day, every day of the week. So if we are not careful, we can easily say things that end up violating the precepts, and we bear the karmic consequences for ourselves. It's like a leaky bucket of water where it drains the water of merits away. And that's what it is. If we're not careful what we say, we drain our own merits without knowing. Speech is therefore something about which all Buddhists are expected to be particularly careful. So we really have to be careful because it's so easy to violate speech precepts. And it's not that you don't observe the precepts, you don't violate. You violate whenever you say, but when you observe the precepts, you become more careful and you don't do damage to yourself, right? You don't hurt yourself spiritually by exhausting your merits by committing wrongdoings. Abstention from false speech, không vọng ngữ,不妄语, can be practiced without practicing truthfulness only by not speaking at all. In other words, silence, if you just observe on the surface, if you're mechanically observing the precepts, chỉ giới trên hình thức, then you can just be silent. But silence is not an effective method of practicing these precepts. Because the Buddha explained to us that one is not to tell the lie. The other side is to avoid a lie. The other side is to say the fact. So it's not about avoiding words that you can observe the precepts. Abstention from false speech is by no means enough. Like all the other precepts, the fourth precept must be observed in its positive form as well as its negative form. So we have to be balanced that we don't do this, but also we need to do the positive side of it. Meaning that we avoid, on the one hand, we should avoid telling lies. On the other hand, we should say facts. We should not say lies. We should say the facts, state the facts. Right? So it's not to be silent and you can say you have observed the precept. When one says that speech is important because it is the primary vehicle of communication between man and man, we are assuming that the parties are telling the truth. So that's the basis. People have to tell the truth. If you're going to believe somebody, the assumption here is that they are telling the truth. One of the simplest yet most important forms of abstention from false speech and cultivation of truthfulness is that what we say should be factually accurate. So it's not just about not saying lies, but we should say what is factually accurate. Because we still have to interact with people, we cannot stay silent forever. We have to expound the Dharma, propagate the Dharma. So we have to use speech to propagate the Dharma. You cannot stay silent forever. As the Buddha says, that this consists in telling what one has seen, as we have seen earlier, right? That say, if you have seen it, say you've seen it. If you have not seen it, say you have not seen it, not the other way around. If you have heard it, then say you have heard it. If you have not heard it, don't say you have heard it. So we should adhere to trustworthy fidelity of the facts as they are actually occur, neither adding nor subtracting anything, nor exaggerating or minimizing anything, and without failing to recount any important details, information. For example, when we say, yeah, there were tons of people showing up at the Dharma assembly, 法會, Pháp hội, but in reality, only 20 people were there. Right? So this statement was not factually accurate. This statement is not accurate because you say tons of people, but only 20 people showed up. So we should be factually accurate in what we say. You can probably already recognize how important this fourth precept is for society and world peace. The encouragement here is that the observance of the fourth precept, even in this limited sense, is extremely difficult. And there is no doubt that we need to learn to be more aware of the factual accuracy if we are to have any hope of observing this precept in its refined and advanced forms. So even telling, simple truth is already difficult, let alone the more advanced form of this precept. But we should not be discouraged. We should try our best to be as factual as possible. When we speak the truth, we do, of course, expect others to believe us. Otherwise, there is no communication, right? When we say that something factual, we want other people to believe us. And when they say something, we should believe what they say. The karmic consequence of not speaking the truth is that eventually no one will believe us. Similarly, we should believe others when they speak the truth. Next to killing a man, perhaps the worst possible thing that you can do to him is not to believe him when he is speaking the truth. Not to believe him when he is speaking the truth negates his identity as a social being and disrupts human harmony. It can be very frustrating if you're trying to communicate to somebody and you're telling them the truth, but they don't believe you. It can be very frustrating, right? And likewise, and they're telling us the truth, but we don't believe them. It can lead to frustration, and then eventually will lead to conflict. So in this precept, it is not only that we don't tell lies, but we should tell the truth. But also we should believe others when they tell us the truth. And we believe them, they believe us. So we should understand this four precept at a deeper level, right? It's not just telling lies, but telling factually accurate information and believing each other when we tell the truth. So therefore, it is, like I said, it is not enough that we should speak the truth. We should also believe others when they speak it, especially within the spiritual community, where we all observe the same precepts. Therefore, we should believe one another, and we should avoid saying things to exaggerate things. Don't say tons of people showed up, but only 20 people showed up. Then it's more believable, uh, to avoid the comic consequence that nobody will believe us um, over time, right? So we ourselves must learn to uphold this precept of abstention from false speech, right? Trì giới, không nói dối. This precept is more than just avoiding false speech, but to believe others when they speak the truth and maintain factually truthful communication with others. Okay? Are there any comments or questions before we move on to the fifth precept? So it's clear, right? That yes.
So there should be the trust in between when you telling someone, and because there is trust built between the community. So when people say something else, so share something, because that has the trust in between. That's why when person shares something, you trust that person is telling the truth.
Yes, yes. Yeah, so in a spiritual community, if there is trust, and trust is built on truth communication, right? And if you, because when you say something and I trust you, that means that I'm placing my, in a sense, my hope, my being on your words. Like, let's say you are asking for advice, like how should I overcome my, my shortcomings, or how do I sit in meditation to have better results? And then when you give me advice and I follow your advice, I'm trusting you. I'm placing my spiritual existence, in a sense, in your hands, and I follow you. And if there is trust, then I can confidently follow your advice without doubt. But if within a spiritual community and there is mistrust, then I would not be able to advance, because I don't fully take your advice, and that will be a disadvantage to me. You may be giving me good advice, but I am not following it because I'm now doubting you. And so that's why it's important that we speak the truth, so that we don't have this atmosphere of doubt because of mistrust. And so when we observe these precepts, that we not only not tell lies, but we should say something that's accurate and that we believe one another. Right? Thank you for the question. Yes. Amida. Okay. The next is the fifth precept: abstention from slanderous or divisive speech. 不两舌，không nói lưỡi hai chiều. This is how the Buddha describes the fifth precept: slanderous speech or divisive speech. He engages in divisive speech. What he has heard here, he tells there to break those apart from these people here. And the same thing, right? What he has heard over there, he comes over here and say, stir things up to create conflict. So breaking apart those who are united, stirring up conflict between those who have broken apart. And he loves factionalism, to separate people, and he delights in separating people, and he enjoys separating people, and he speaks things to create separation, disunity. And so that is what this slanderous speech is, divisive speech is that the point here is that to break people apart, to create conflict. So therefore, this is unskillful, the second unskillful verbal action. On the skillful side, the Buddha says, he abstains from divisive speech. He does not tell things to create conflict, to break up people. And not only that, but he reconciles those who have broken apart and cementing those who are united, meaning make the unity even stronger. And he loves concord. He loves harmony. He enjoys harmony, and he speaks things to create harmony. So one is not only not say things to create unity, to create conflict, but to say things that you avoid conflict but to strengthen the unity of people. So this is skillful, 善口业，甜口nghiệp. The kind of speech that causes disunity among people is malicious in nature, very harmful. Malice is, of course, enmity of heart, hatred of ill will, right? Malice is hatred or ill will. And malicious speech, in the most general sense, is speech that proceeds from or is controlled by unskillful states of that kind. 恶意, ác ý. So when we have unskillful mental states, that it is easy for us to give rise to hatred or ill will. And the purpose of such malicious speech is to destroy the state of unity, harmony, existing between two or more people, with the intention to cause disunity, discord, and disharmony, hatred. It might be more accurate to call such speech as slanderous speech or backbiting rather than malicious speech. Because the real nature of the precept of abstention from malicious speech or divisive speech, không nói lưỡi hai chiều, is well brought out in the Buddha's teaching to Kunda, the silversmith, which we have seen earlier. Abandoning slanderous speech and abstaining therefrom, the Buddha says of one who observes the precepts that of course, what you have heard over here, you don't go to the other side to cause conflict, and what you have heard on the other side, you don't come here and create conflict. So this way, the two parties, they attack each other, and that's what we should not do to stir up problems. Quarrels, arguments, often begin with a third party deliberately, consciously stirring up trouble by telling two people or two groups of people what each is supposed to have said about the other in their absence, right? Say, I heard they say about you when you were not here, that you were, disorganized and very negative. And so that's causing tension. And you go to the other side, hey, what they said about you is not very good. And so now there's mistrust and there's conflict. Sometimes this is purely making up stories. It's just making up stories. But more often is something which actually was said, but which has been taken out of context or not clearly, it's not clear in the telling. It's just miscommunication. It could be somebody deliberately, maliciously making up stories, but often it's just miscommunication, where you hear something, you say, what? He said that? When it was something not a big deal. But because of miscommunication, now we think that that group is bad, or that person is bad, that's trying to hurt you. So the person observing the fifth precept abstains from such crooked behavior. The Buddha is telling us not only should we avoid divisive speech that causes disunity, but we should also help to restore harmony. So this is why he's saying here that he takes delight in harmony. He loves harmony. He enjoys harmony. And he speaks things to reinforce or to create harmony and not to stir up problems. So the Buddha's language is very strong here, that one who observes the fifth precept does not merely abstain from malicious speech by avoiding people or staying in silence, right? That's not how we observe this precept, but he takes a positive delight in harmony. It's about preserving the harmony. And it is because of that he utters speech which makes for harmony. So you say things to unite people. You say kind things to help people avoid misunderstanding, such as telling somebody what good things a friend has said about him or how that friend has defended him against criticism. So we can say things to avoid misunderstanding. So from here, we can say that positive counterpart of abstention from divisive speech is not so much harmonious speech, not actually the words, but the harmonizing speech, meaning that I'm trying to differentiate between harmonious speech and harmonizing speech here, is that, in other words, speech which transforms discord, disharmony into harmony, raises the harmony that already exists between people to an even higher level, right? In other words, it's not about the words you say, but your intention of resolving harmony. One is to avoid misunderstanding, right? You should say things to avoid misunderstanding. Sometimes sometimes you may have to say things in the direct way to avoid misunderstanding, saying, "Hey, stop it. This is not how it is." Sometimes you have to be direct about it, but it's not. But it would not cause problems because it is to prevent misunderstanding. The second is that one, there is already harmony. You should say things to reinforce the harmony. Does that make sense? Right. From this perspective, our bodily behavior can speak the language of harmony or disunity. It depends on how we behave. We may not say anything, but because how we react, how we give that person the dirty look, or be more friendly with one but ignoring the other, you can cause disharmony. Does it make sense? Yeah. So it's not about the words, but it's about harmonizing speech, right? It's what you do, what you say that can cause harmony or disharmony. So it's not about the words, but it's how you use the words, how you act to speak. Your body language can speak such harmonizing language or disharmonizing language. The applicability of this to the spiritual community, 生团当道, should be obvious, right? In this spiritual community, people come here because of the aspiration for something higher. But if there is mistrust, saying because of this unity, people can leave people at a more disadvantage, meaning even worse than they came here. They may be worse, they may be bad on the outside, and so they come to a spiritual community to look for help. But if they found that the spiritual community is even more harmful, then they're going to leave. But when they leave this spiritual community, they will end up worse than when they came, right? So we should be mindful of that we should observe this fifth precept to not avoid separating people, because they come here, they want a place to trust, a place that they can spiritually rely on. But they come here to say, "Hey, that group doesn't like me. I'm being separated," or "I hate that group," or "Why is that group saying? I've heard that they said bad things about me." Now they will be even in a worse position because they come to a place that they think they can trust, but now they realize that they cannot trust the world, they cannot trust the spiritual community. There is nowhere else for them to go. So they will lose hope, and they will be worse than they were before they came into a spiritual community. Does it make sense? Society back then, hundreds, thousands of years ago, it was more simple with the monarchical structure where great kings were mostly moral leaders who wanted to ensure the well-being of their people. Nowadays, people don't generally trust the government, with many cases of corrupt political leaders regularly occurring. If the political leaders are lying to the people, should the people not say anything that might cause social chaos? But if they say something, and even if it causes social chaos, it could eliminate corruption. So what should they do? Now, I mean, freedom of speech is important and sometimes can cause disharmony in order to remove corruption or prevent major harm. For example, in the 70s, when there was a Vietnam War, right, people found out that the government was lying to them, and so they spoke up, and that caused a lot of chaos. Of course, it was not good, but at the same time, it helped to eliminate corruption as well. And so the Buddha only gave a general guideline, knowing that situations could change. It would be for the people of the time and place to figure it out for themselves. We can see over the course of human history, there have been hundreds and thousands of different situations and courses of action. So that's why the Buddha could only give us a guideline. It would be impractical for him to give us a solution for every problem. It would not be possible, would not be practically possible. So going deep in this topic is out of scope for this lecture. I just wanted to point out the complexity of the problem in the modern society and that we are not ignorant about it. It requires merits to be able to convince others to do the right things, right? Phúc báo. And it takes wisdom, trí tuệ, to know what the right things are. So it requires merit and wisdom. What I'm trying to say is, before we get all worked up trying to motivate people to do something, we should work on ourselves to cultivate merit and wisdom. Tu phước và tu trí tuệ. Therefore, an appropriate thing for us to do is to continue to do our best to cultivate merits and wisdom with the aspiration to help others. The fifth precept is to avoid divisive speech that causes disunity among people, and to do our best to preserve harmony. Okay, are there any additional comments, questions? Yes.
What is the difference between lying or, for example, if you misunderstood the concept? For example, if you feel that that person can take care of when giving speech, the other person in his point of view think that it's like guiding or like scolding, and then he spread out that message out to another person. Will that cause this harmonize?
Yeah. So you're saying, if somebody is telling us, teaching us with compassion, but then we don't like it, we go out and we say, hey, that person yelled at me. That person is not a nice person. In that case, if truly that our teacher, let's say our teacher is trying to teach us, and sometimes he has to be tough on us out of compassion, but then we go out and we say, hey, I don't like that teacher. He's very difficult. He's not a good person. Again, that is divisive speech, because now you're causing you what you heard here or what you understood here, you go out to the side and you say something bad about that person when it may not be true. Right? That person is trying to teach you, and it was not, maybe it was not in public to embarrass you. Maybe it was a private conversation. But because of your unskillful mental state, at that point, you receive that message in a negative way. And so your misunderstanding is now causing you to say unskillful things, right? We talked about unskillful states of mind, 烦恼, phiền não, tham sân si. That unskillful state of mind is causing you to say unskillful things, bất thiện, điều bất thiện, nói điều bất thiện. And so yes, so that is divisive speech, because you are causing disharmony between the teachers and his students, right? Yeah, so we should be careful that before we say things. That's why Mr. Chen, the chairman, hội长, right? Ông hội trưởng, he often reminds us but before you say something, are you willing to bear the consequence of that? What about you're about to say? If you're sure that it's gonna bring benefits, then say it. If you're not sure, then don't say it. So when we go out and we say that master, that teacher, that person is not a good person, then we can cause disharmony because we are not speaking the truth because it is our misunderstanding. But for example, if that master was deceiving other people and you know that he's deceiving and you have evidence, maybe bank statements or records that you know for sure that that teacher, that person is cheating his students, then you can go out and you can say, hey, don't be cheated. And you are not causing disharmony because you are preventing those people, those students from being harmed. But you could also bear the consequence of that teacher hating you, right? So on one side, you are cultivating merits by preventing a lot of people from being deceived. On the other hand, you are creating, agony. You're creating this hatred with the teacher because now he's losing students or losing followers. But because of Bodhisattva's heart, tâm từ bi, Bồ Tát đạo, Bodhisattva, that you don't want to see people from hurt, and so you are taking on this hardship on yourself for the sake of sentient beings, and that is the spirit of Bodhisattva. That hey, I don't care if he hates me because I don't care about popularity. I want to say the truth to help people, and so that's the right thing to do. And it's not easy because it takes courage to say the right things. Because if you have somebody powerful, more powerful than you, in a higher position, and you say something against him, you will face consequence. He could retaliate. He could come back and hurt you. So it's not easy. It really takes courage because you're saying that I'm willing to face the consequence of him retaliating me, taking revenge on me, but to save other people from being deceived. But and this is where you earn merit, because once you have gone through that, you gain strength. And the more that you do that, you will realize you are no longer afraid. So we should take little by little to train ourselves. We should not be afraid to do difficult things. Because when we say something to other people, when we are criticizing somebody above for their misconduct, we are putting ourselves in a negative, disadvantaged position, take toy, and therefore we could lose the support. And those people who we help might not have the ability to support us. So we have to support ourselves. At the same time, we have to fight against the attack. And so that's why it's so scary. That's why many people don't speak up, because of fear that they will be put in a disadvantaged position, that they will be hurt. And so that's why it takes courage. Bodhisattvas are very courageous. They don't have the self, vô ngã, ú wo. There's no concern about the self of being hurt because they're compassionate. Okay? So when we have fear, we should increase our compassion. We think about the suffering of other people, and that helps to overcome our fear. When we have fear and we worry about ourselves, we are multiplying that fear. But when we have fear and we say people are suffering, and we focus on people suffering and we try to help them, our fear will be eliminated. So one way of overcoming fear is not to focus on how to deal with our own fear, but to focus on the suffering of other people and what we can do to alleviate, to help them, to deliver them from suffering. Right? Yeah. Thank you. Okay, the sixth precept is abstention from harsh speech. 不恶口，không nói lời hung ác. Let us see how the Buddha defines harsh speech. He said, he engages in harsh speech. He speaks words that are insolent, cutting, mean to others, reviling others, provoking anger, and destroying concentration. So this is unskillful. On the skillful side, the Buddha says, abandoning harsh speech, he abstains from harsh speech. He speaks words that are soothing, pleasing to the ear, that are affectionate, that go to the heart, that are polite, appealing, and pleasing to people at large. So he said at large, so not everybody will like what you say because you may be saying things that about the teachers or that person deceiving his followers. The followers may be thankful to you, so they may like it, but that person may not like it. So that's why the Buddha is very practical here, say at large, like to a large, generally is pleasing to the people, not everybody. You can never please everybody. With regard to the negative form of the sixth precept, it is necessary to abstain from harsh speech in its cruder and more obvious forms, including indecent, obscene language of every kind. Tục ngữ, mấy lời nói tục. I'm afraid to give you examples of indecent and obscene language. The most descriptive that I can say is to avoid the use of the four-letter words. Any more specific, I will have to repent to the Buddha later. So I will not give you specific examples. I'm sure you know what I mean. Almost everyone in a civilized society has been taught that the four-letter words are bad. But then there are people who use them. Why is that? Why do people use four-letter words? It is because people use the four-letter words as a sign of rugged masculinity and a freedom from convention. They want to appear tough, so that's why they use bad words, those four-letter words, to show that they are not afraid of the convention. Everybody else is afraid of using those four-letter words, but here, I'm not afraid, so they're trying to show how tough they are. They want others to know that they are free and not afraid to do whatever they want. That's what they're trying to show by saying bad words. But if you think about it, this is not freedom or fearlessness, but a sign of emotional immaturity, poor imagination, and limited vocabulary. They can use other words to describe what they want, their intentions, but they choose to say bad words to express their anger. That is poor imagination, poor vocabulary, and very immature. Right? They don't have to be angry to express what's on their mind. They can say things in a way to still be able to communicate, but they choose to use four-letter words because they are essentially emotionally immature or lack vocabulary. Coarse, indecent, and obscene language are the expressions of strongly negative emotional states and can quite poison the atmosphere because they can trigger anger and hatred in others. So when we say bad words, it's already from negative mental states. You're already negative. That's why it drives you to say those bad words. Such as harsh speech poisons the atmosphere, so kindly speech, the positive counterpart of abstention from harsh speech, purifies and invigorates the environment. It makes people feel happier, lighter, and non-threatened. For example, if somebody were to come here and start to use bad words, the atmosphere changes immediately. You start to feel threatened. Right? This what is going on. Why is this person being so aggressive, using bad words? So you can see that bad words can poison the atmosphere. But if we are in a dangerous environment and we hear people using kind words, we feel calm, we feel confident, we feel safe, right? So therefore, it purifies and invigorates the environment. Kindly speech is like the warm rays of the rising sun that causes leaves to expand and flowers to open up. Often people do not realize how positive an effect can be produced by a few friendly words, just by saying thank you. It's just or I appreciate your help. Those small words, and it doesn't cost you a whole lot. Just those words can really help to purify, can soothe, and can make the environment much safer for yourself and for others. Because if you were to say negative words, you are inviting trouble. If you are in a public and you say negative words, you can trigger somebody and they can get angry and you can start a fight and a conflict. So therefore, it is very poisonous, and so we should use positive words more, kindly words, to have this positive effect for yourself and for others. Kindly speech or affectionate speech, 爱语, 爱语, as we also call it, should be habitual to us. We should do it on a regular basis. And it is not something that we keep for use in emergencies or in special occasions or special people. So thank you. I appreciate those kindly words. We should often use them and not save them for the holidays, right? Those are not to be used on special occasions, but we should use them on a regular basis. One of the principal forms of kindly speech is what is known in Buddhism as rejoicing in merits. 随喜赞叹, tùy hỷ tán thán. Not only we, mundane beings, 凡夫, phàm phu, need to learn how to rejoice in the merits of others, but even great bodhisattvas are learning it. In the great 10 vows of Samanta Vajra Bodhisattva, Phổ Hiền Bồ Tát, the sixth vow has rejoice in merits of others. 随喜功德, right? 随喜功德, tùy hỷ công đức. Let me change that right now. There we go. All fixed. It is said that these 10 great vows are foundational to attaining Buddhahood. Without learning to rejoice in the merits of others, one cannot become a Buddha. So this is how important it is. If you don't know how to rejoice in the merits of others, you will not be able to become a Buddha. That is why it is so foundational. Rejoicing is not lip service, right? We just don't say, oh, no, I rejoice in your merits. Yeah, keep doing. Don't bother me. No, do whatever you need to do whatever that you need to do. No, I don't have time, but yeah, keep doing. I rejoice in your merits. So it's not lip service, but to provide support and enable others to complete their merits, right? To provide, if we don't have time, provide monetary support, financial support. If you have money, or if you don't have money, then you can come and and volunteer and help out, rearrange furniture or clean up to make the spiritual community more attractive, so that people come here, they feel safe, that it's clean, that they can just focus and not have to worry about the dirtiness or the infections and all the dirtiness of the place. A Buddha's main deed is rejoicing in the merits of others. And why is that? Why is that a Buddha, all he can do is really to rejoice in the merits of others? A Buddha is one who has already done it all and achieved ultimate merits and wisdom. Lưỡng túc tôn, right? Meaning he has achieved ultimate wisdom. There's really nothing left for him to do to earn merits, because he has achieved it all already. So the best thing for a Buddha to do is to support others. In other words, to rejoice in the merits of bodhisattvas who are still on the path to Buddhahood. And this is why to be a Buddha, you have to rejoice in the merits of others, because there is nothing left for you to do. So you can appreciate the importance of this sixth precept to avoid harsh speech and to cultivate kindly speech, such as rejoicing in the merits of others. Does it make sense? Okay. Are there any other comments or questions? So you can see how important it is that the kindly words that we say can purify and invigorate the environment, make people feel safe. Right? A bad words, a curse words, four-letter words can poison the environment. All of a sudden you say, I don't feel safe anymore because people are cursing. Because when you curse, you say bad things using obscene language, you are inviting trouble. And of course, with trouble, you don't feel safe. And so you can see that some kindly words like thank you, I appreciate what you're doing, you're helping, can make people feel at ease. And that is giving fearlessness. And so there are karmic rewards for those skillful actions.
What about say I'm sorry?
Yes, I'm sorry. It depends. I think if you say I'm sorry all the time, then yeah, even with thank you too. You say it all the time and you don't mean it, then it can be a problem. Yes, saying I'm sorry can help to eliminate the feeling of danger as well. Because when somebody is telling you they're sorry, that means they are not going to attack you. They have admitted their wrongdoing and they will not repeat the wrongdoing. So if they are telling the truth and you believe that they are telling the truth, then there is no fear. It can help to purify the environment as well. Right? So saying thank you, I'm sorry, and what else? So all those kindly words can help us to and help the environment to be purified. And so the point here is that not only are we avoid saying words that can hurt other people, unpleasant to the ears, but we should say things that are soothing to the ears, because people will be more at ease, especially in a spiritual community. When you sit and meditate, you are defenseless. And if you have to be defensive, then you are not at ease. So when you are defenseless, that is when you are at ease. Just like you at home, you feel at ease, so you don't have to defend yourself. But you are outside, you're in a new environment. You are not at ease, so you have to be looking around, trying to defend yourself against danger. And so when we can give kindly speech, we are giving fearlessness. Vô ý bố thí, không lo sợ. Vô ý là không lo sợ. So we are cultivating merits. And when we cultivate merits, we have karmic rewards. We don't have to worry about the danger of life. We can be at ease sitting in meditation or chanting Amida without having to worry about the negative consequences, because we are preventing negative things, bad things from happening, because we are providing good condition, duyên tốt, and therefore bad things will not happen, because we have no bad conditions for bad things, bad seeds to grow to fruition. And therefore, when we say kindly speech, we often will attract kindly people. We attract kind people. We attract compassionate people, and we will avoid negative people that cause conflicts. And therefore, we do not encounter conflicts. Right? So when we observe the sixth precept, we are, in a sense, protecting ourselves by not providing the conditions for negative things to happen to us. Does it make sense? Yeah. Okay, so before we go to next one, I think I'm going to end here so that we can pick up because we have passed the hour. So when we come back next time, we'll talk about the last verbal precept, and that is abstention from frivolous speech, không nói thiêu dệt, or no gossip. Okay. All right. Are there any comments before we end here? So let me summarize, and then we will conclude for today. If we want to achieve spiritual liberation and enlightenment, we should uphold the precepts. 止giới, 持戒. Wisdom cannot be uncovered in the state of unskillfulness and mental confusion, but only in the state of skillfulness and concentration. It is so very important that I have to repeat it because we really have to believe in this statement. You cannot do bad things and then have regret, have remorse, and expect to be able to sit in meditation. It doesn't work that way. And when your mind is all stirred up because you are mentally confused now, you will not be able to see things clearly. Just like the example that we just talked about, that if a teacher was trying to teach us, and we would not be able to hear the teaching, receive the teaching, if we were in a state of mental confusion, meaning a lot of afflictions, 烦恼, phiền não, we will not be able to hear the teaching, receive the teaching. So it's very important that we have this calm mind to be able to see things clearly. And one way to be able to have this calm mind is to do the right things so that we don't have to worry about the consequences, and that is to observe the precepts. Because a Buddhist following the threefold study of precept, meditation, and wisdom, giới định tuệ, tam học giới định tuệ, that Buddhism continues to exist. Buddhism doesn't exist in books, but in our lives. If nobody is practicing Buddhism, meaning if nobody observing the precepts, there will be no Buddhism. Does it make sense? Yes. A Buddhist is one who takes refuges in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, quy Phật, quy Pháp, quy Tăng, and observes at least 5 precepts. And so we've been talking about the 10 precepts. We express our aspiration for enlightenment by leading a life that is consistent with the Buddhist principles. When we observe the precepts, we are expressing our ideal. Does it make sense? We are committing to the ideal, and we are living the ideal. We are expressing it. If we don't observe the precepts, then we are not truly committed to the ideal because we're not living it. It's just lip service, but you don't believe it. You say one thing, but you don't believe what you say. When you can commit to it, when you can live it, then you are really serious about your ideal, what you say, right? And we can see, so I will leave there for that for now. And when we come back, we'll talk about the 7th precept, and hopefully we have enough time to complete the rest. So hopefully this kind of content is applicable, because I understand that precepts are not easy to learn and to talk about, because it can feel like somebody is scolding you. And so I don't want that to be the takeaway, but I want you to understand that upholding the precept is fundamental to the development of the human. It's fundamental to uncovering wisdom, but also fundamental to our human development. And so please provide me feedback if this is not appropriate, but I would like to hear from you if this is something that we should focus on, and to really understand why we need to observe the precepts. Right? I hope it's clear by now that we should uphold the precepts.